Three biggest mistakes people make when looking for an apartment to rent in the Czech Republic. There are obviously plenty of mistakes people make, but I decided to talk about three of them specifically because those are the most common. So I'll tell you more about the mistakes and ways of avoiding that and give you a bit more context as well. So stick with me. Number one is falling for scams. I would kind of imagine a world where people don't fall for scams anymore because they are so much aware of the scams and they just don't make the mistakes, but it is still happening. And I want to say that also the scammers are actually developing, because when the scams started, that was pretty obvious that they were scammers. But now it's more and more sophisticated. They even send you fake IDs, or there are actually IDs they stole from someone who fell for the scam. So it's like real IDs, but from someone else they scammed. And they get that develop, like they make the scams better, so more people fall for it. But there are like two simple rules. If you stick to them, you can never get scammed, basically. First, don't pay anything, or like basically that's one rule: don't pay anything but A, before you have visited the apartment in person, and B, before you have seen the lease agreement and before you got the lease agreement checked. Because that's usually how the scams go. They find whatever excuse that they cannot show you the apartment, and that should be a big red flag for you. And second thing is that if they don't want to send you a lease agreement in advance, but that can be like a complete scam, that it's like they have no connection to the flat at all, but it can also be a scammy real estate agent, for example, because if there is like a real estate agent and they want you to pay the deposit or the reservation fee or the commission, whatever we call it, before they send you the lease agreement to check, I also call it a scam, because basically when you pay the commission, when you pay the reservation deposit or like reservation fee, you are kind of obliged to sign the lease agreement, and if you don't, they have all the rights to keep your deposit or the reservation fee. So if they don't want to share the contract, it's also kind of a shady behavior, because they want you to sign, or they want you to pay money to reserve something you have not seen. So I call it a scam as well. So guys, don't send money to anyone if you haven't seen the apartment, whatever excuse they say. Like, because they can really get sophisticated, and the excuse might seem like realistic and everything, like you understand and you believe them, all that. But if you haven't seen the apartment, don't send money to anyone. And the same thing if you haven't got the lease agreement in advance so you can check it, then do not need it either. And that brings us to actually the second biggest mistake people make when renting an apartment, and that is that they either don't get a lease agreement at all, or they don't get it in advance, as I talked about it previously, or they don't get it checked by a professional. Because again, I talked about it in relation to immigration, but it's the same here. That someone speaks Czech doesn't mean that they can check your lease agreement, because lease agreements or contracts of any type are not about like understanding the language itself, understanding Czech, but they're about understanding the law language, the language of law, and all the connections, because the lease agreement is not like a thing on its own, but it's related to other things. You need to use the lease agreement for your visa application, or for your residence permit application, or just for some other official purposes. And if you don't check for these connections in the lease agreement, then you might end up renting an apartment which you cannot use for any official purposes. And that really happens. So definitely, and of course, as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there are good agents and bad agents. It's always been like that. Now, I would say it's getting better, and there are better and better real estate agencies, and there are some really good real estate agencies like we work with and we have complete trust in, and when we know that if someone signs a lease agreement with them, like 99% of cases that will be fine. So there are good agencies, but as I mentioned before, there are also agencies that will try to scam you either on purpose or just because they are unprofessional or whatever. So I understand this, but still having your lease agreement checked by a professional is better than not having it checked at all, or having it checked by someone who just speaks Czech. And there are many reasons for that. So, for example, what we always check when we work with some lease agreements, of course, if we look for accommodation for our clients, because that's one of the services we provide as well. So if you need any help with that, get in touch. We'll be happy to make sure that everything goes well with the apartment search. We'll help you find something and we'll make sure that everything is good. But even if we don't look for accommodation for our clients and we only take care of the immigration side of that, like getting them a visa or getting their families here or applying for a trade license or whatever, there are still a couple things we always check in the lease agreement. First is the ownership of the flat. Are you signing the lease with the real owner of the apartment or with someone else? If someone else, do you have everything you need to connect the person you're signing the lease with and the owner? That means usually, do you have a power of attorney, which was signed by the owner authorizing this person to act on their behalf? Or do they have a lease agreement which is still valid and will be valid for as long as you need it? Because if you want to get a visa for 1 year, you need to have a lease valid for 1 year. But also the lease agreement of your landlord must be valid for at least 1 year. So is all these, or are all these like steps correct? Yeah, also, if there are more owners, how many of them will be signing the lease or the proof of accommodation? Which ones? If it's a company, like who is the representative of the company who can sign the lease agreement on behalf of the company? Or like in the worst case scenario, if you are signing a lease with housing cooperative, with družstvo, are you really sure that they will provide all the documents you need? Because that's a big problem, or can be a very big problem, to get any documents from the družstvo for housing cooperative. So if you find a flat where housing cooperative is the owner, like ideally go away. Even worse, if you find a flat which is owned by the city or the state, because those are not officially, you cannot, or they cannot rent it out. Because if the city is the owner and they have some tenant, that's where it ends. They cannot sublease it by the law. So yeah, so that's the ownership. But the second thing we check is if the flat is actually a flat. Because again, this is becoming more and more common for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that there are so many people looking for accommodation, but not that many apartments available, that landlords get creative and they reconstruct their cellars into apartments. They reconstruct their attic, whatever, the thing below the roof into apartments. And even though it looks like an apartment, you have everything as in a normal apartment. On paper, it's not an apartment because it doesn't meet some requirements, like the thickness of the walls, or the amount of sunlight, or the temperature requirements, insulation requirements, whatever. There are so many things you need to meet if you want to make a space an apartment opposed to an office or something else, that not all these, or like majority of like these reconstructed apartments might not be even qualified as flats. And if you sign a lease for so-called atelier, for example, which is like an artist's studio, let's say, but it's officially a business space, you cannot use it for any official purposes. You cannot use it for your visa, you cannot use it to get a residence certificate, residence permit in the Czech Republic, nothing. So that's the second thing we check. And then, of course, all the like bowels of the contract. So all the other information there, like when they will return your deposit, that's a very important. And it's in some cases, I've seen lease agreements with big companies like real estate companies offering this, and they would return your deposit after like 6 or 9 months because they were waiting for the final calculation. They were not able to do like a calculation just for you with the electricity, gas or whatever, and they literally had in the lease agreement that they will return the deposit like 6 to 9 months later. And if you want to like wait 9 months for your deposit, good for you, but I would not do that. And there are many other things like that, and many of them have like relations. For example, this like permanent address. That's what people often ask us about. So that's one first thing that came to my mind. In most lease agreements, it says that you cannot use it as your permanent address, which is actually like a good thing for you, let's say, because this only applies to Czech citizens, because there is this kind of, let's say, status of your permanent address, which means that's the address the government has registered for you, and it's in your like Czech ID and all that. So this can be applicable to Czech citizens, even though not exactly, but that's a different story. But foreigners, it doesn't apply at all to foreigners. So you don't really need to worry about this, but that's actually one of the things people ask us about, because it sounds like it's related to your residence permit, your permanent residence permit or something like that. It's actually not. So this is one of the things which is actually should not be concerning for you. But on the other hand, there are plenty of things that should be concerning for you. And if you don't know them specifically, if you don't know the implications and how it's connected to all the other like residence matters, all that, then you can get yourself into unnecessary trouble. So that was the second thing. And third thing is, third mistake is that people don't make photos of the apartment when they are moving in, and they don't share it with the landlord. They don't make photos of all the documents, and they don't make the handover protocol. They don't check all the keys, how everything works in the apartment. That's kind of a lot of things together, but the most important thing is to make photos when you're moving in. Because it doesn't matter how long you live there. If it's for 6 months, 12 months or 7 years, when you're finishing the lease, neither you nor the landlord will remember if there were any scratches on the wall, if this like cupboard door was a bit broken or not, if this like particular tile was already like crashed or not. And of course, not like all the landlords, but generally speaking, if I'm a landlord and I don't remember something being broken, I will kind of think that you did that, and I will try to deduct it from your deposit. Not necessarily because I try to scam you or get your money or something, but like I just don't remember. If I visit your apartment like once, like maybe we signed a lease there and then I don't go there for a year, I just don't remember what exactly like what the scratches were and all that. And if we have photos, if we have it in a shared file where we can always go back to and see, okay, this was already here, this wasn't here, then if we don't have it, then it's just word against word, and you are kind of in the weaker position because the landlord has your deposit. So if they don't want to return it and they say that you broke something, like what you will do if you don't have the photos, you cannot do anything. Even if you wanted to hire a lawyer, if the deposit was high enough for you to hire a lawyer, if the deposit was 20,000 crowns, you would probably pay more for the lawyer, even if they won, than what you would get back. So it makes no sense. But if you, even if the deposit is high, like 100,000 crowns or something, so hiring a lawyer makes sense. If you don't have a proof of what was the original state of the apartment, that the scratch was already there when you moved there, or that the damage was already there, what the lawyer will do? Like, yeah, he really remembers that. He has a good memory. That will not work. So that's one of the main reasons why you should have everything documented. Even if you don't want to make photos or whatever, just make sure that the handover protocol lists all the details, all the problems you can find, and it's written somewhere. And definitely do it also within the first days after moving in. So because, okay, you go see the apartment once, you spend there 15 minutes probably, then you decide for the apartment, you go take over the apartment, and then you spend like, I don't know, half an hour, 1 hour maybe with the landlord, checking the apartment, signing everything, all that. That's not much time. So within the first couple days, you will try the washing machine, you will try the dishwasher, you will open all the closets, everything. And then you might still find some more things that were broken, that were not working. And it's still within the first couple days, it's still wise to report it to the landlord. If they don't fix it or anything, if they tell you, yeah, okay, that was there, I will not do anything about that, I just don't want to buy a new shelf or whatever, so live with that. It's okay, because at least you have a record of that. You send him the text message, you send him the email, you have the recent photo, you shared it somewhere. And then if something happens at the end of the lease and they try to tell you that you did that, you have a proof that you didn't and that they already agreed that it was there before. So these were the main problems. Of course, there are more, but these are the ones we like face the most with our clients when we're looking for accommodation for them, or even if we work just with the visa part. So if you want to make sure that you don't make these mistakes and that everything works out well, get in touch. We'll be happy to help you find an apartment in Prague or in the Czech Republic in general. And now, I wasn't planning to do this, but since there are a couple questions in the chat, I will answer them. Guys, I appreciate you coming here, and it's been around 10 people the whole time, which is great. So let me see. I will try to respond to everything which is here. So Sechin Kude, I believe, sorry if I'm mispronouncing. I will try next week, tourist visa to Czech Republic, travel in April. Is it good time to apply? Well, we don't deal much with short-term visas like tourist visas, so I cannot really say, but generally speaking, from the relocation perspective, this is a perfect time to apply, because that's not really high season. I cannot say for tourist visas. I guess now it's the low season as well. Not too many people travel in winter. They usually travel during summer or like when it's nice and warm. So I would say it's still good. But again, we primarily focus on moving people here, not just like bringing tourists. Biruk Misasu, sorry if mispronouncing again. Brother, can you tell me, is labor card, what does it mean and how can I get? I don't know what labor card means, because that's not an official term. If you mean an employee card, it's a type of residence permit which is based on finding an employment in the Czech Republic. So if you're, let's say, from Tunisia or wherever, and you find a job in the Czech Republic, you can potentially apply for so-called employee card, which will allow you to live in the Czech Republic and work for that one specific company at that one specific position for up to 2 years, renewable generally. That's probably what you mean, but a labor card does not really mean anything, so that was just my guess, that's what you mean. Mohammed Nurul Alam, thanks for all those valuable information. I always follow in your videos. Thank you very much. I do this for you, so I'm happy that you're here and that you appreciate it and that the information is useful. If you have any tips on what kind of videos you would like me to make, please share it in the comments after I finish the live stream, and I'll be happy to consider that. Because I've made already almost 400 videos, so sometimes it might be pretty difficult to find new topics. Seth Ose, please, a friend was called to come for second interview, but she should come with an interpreter, and he was asked also to bring on an ID. Please, what are his chances, and also what questions should he expect? Well, honestly, this depends on what kind of visa or residence permit they applied for and why they were called for the interview. It's kind of weird that the embassy or the ministry requested an interpreter, so that might indicate something, but I would need to know more about the case to be able to advise reasonably, because if you tell me they called my friend for a second interview, what does it mean? It can mean anything. The good thing is that the ministry did not deny the application yet, so there is still a chance. But now it will depend on the outcome of the interview. So we should kind of know what they are looking for, what might be the potential problem, and based on that you can adjust your answers and hopefully get a good result. Romy What about Malta? I don't know what you mean exactly. Like, how is the housing situation in Malta? I don't know. I've been there, but only as a tourist, so I've never looked for an apartment there. Mohammed Narul Alam, I have a question about extension of residence card for family reunification. I have applied for extension, but they asked me to prove the financial statements. Well, yeah, one of the requirements of the residence permit is to prove your monthly income. So you need to show that you're making high enough or that your income is high enough to support you and your family. So the ministry requests this normally. For students, there is the option of, instead of proving your monthly income, you can also just prove your balance, like how much money you have in your bank account. So it depends on what exactly they requested from you. My tax return was for 2023, which is not enough, but I have waited. Yeah, okay, so if you're self-employed, that's you should have hired someone to help, I think. Because if you're a self-employed person and you need to prove your income, and especially for your family, that's a very tricky situation because the minimums change pretty often. Plus, there is a specific way how the ministry calculates your income as a freelancer, and also depends on the timing, exactly as you say, because now you haven't done your 2023 taxes, so the ministry is looking at 2022 taxes, but they were probably lower than required anyway. Because they've increased the minimum since then probably, so it's a very tricky situation. Yeah. Ervan Dubogan, I believe. Hi Jan, very informative live, thank you. Happy to help, thank you very much for joining. Setose, and he was just asked to bring only an ID card. He applied for a student visa. Well, student visa, usually well, it depends. If they just asked, but it's kind of weird that they would ask your friend to bring ID and not a passport, so that's kind of weird. As for ID in the translator, that kind of makes sense. They need to check if he's a real translator, that's fine. But a second interview, I believe I did a video about that, so if you just search in my channel for a second interview, you might find something. Generally, they're trying to verify some information from the first interview or from the first application. Often, for the second interview, they are looking at your finances. So if they see or if they have suspicions that you didn't really have enough money on your bank account and you just borrowed it from someone and then you sent it back, they would request the bank statement to bring with you for the second interview. I think that's the most common thing. And if you have done it this way, that you didn't have really the money there and you just borrowed it from someone and then you returned it back, then most likely your application will be denied because that's not meeting the requirements of the ministry. If they don't want the proofs of funds, then there might be some other information they want to verify. So maybe there is someone already living in the Czech Republic they forgot to mention during the interview, or they question your motivation to study in the Czech Republic more. That's also very common for the student visa or student residence permit, because your reason to be here is to study a Czech university. But why you want to study a Czech university? Why you don't want to study like an American university or a British university, which might be way better than Czech universities? So they usually question your motivation in this. But again, it's very difficult to say why they invited someone for a second interview if we don't follow the case. Okay, guys, hopefully this was useful. Some of you mentioned that it was, so I'm happy to hear that. Share it, like it. If you think this content might help someone else, please share it, like it. And of course, if you need any help with finding accommodation, get in touch. We'll be happy to help you with that. And see you again Thursday. Guys, one more thing. On Wednesday, we'll be doing the big live stream Q&As with the mortgage expert, one of the biggest mortgage experts in the Czech Republic. So if you don't have it saved yet, it will be this coming Wednesday. What is it? The 31st of January, 17:30 Prague time, so 5:30 Prague time. and we'll be doing Q&As about getting a mortgage in the Czech Republic. What are the qualification requirements? What type of residence permit you need to have? What income? If you can pay off the mortgage sooner or not. So all these questions with a mortgage expert, but it will not be on this channel. It will be on the official Move to Prague Relocation Experts channel. So I will share a post or whatever you call it. I will post a post. I will post some information here on this channel, but please subscribe to Move to Prague so you get notified when we actually start. It will be a bit bigger. We should have better cameras. We should have better microphones. We will have an expert on that topic, so we will go deeper in like getting mortgages. So join us for that. Because I wanted to say like see you on Thursday, but I will actually be seeing you on Wednesday, most likely as well. And then again, Thursday, Monday, until the end of the world. So see you guys. Good night. Bye-bye.